My family conceived me as a designer baby to save my brother. When I refused to donate my kidney, they publicly defamed me, but I exposed the truth and left them with nothing. I'm 24 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer. And honestly, I need to get this story off my chest, because it's the only way I've found to process it without feeling like I'm going to lose my mind. What happened basically destroyed my family. Or, well, what I thought was my family. And I found out things about my existence that, honestly, not even in my worst nightmares would I have imagined. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I was a kid and thought everything in my house was normal, I grew up being Marcus's little sister, who's 4 years older than me, so he's 28 now. For as long as I can remember, Marcus was always like the center of the universe in my house. It's not that I was mistreated or anything like that, but there was something, a subtle difference in how my parents treated him versus how they treated me. Like, if Marcus wanted pizza for dinner, we'd have pizza. If I wanted pasta, my mom would say, "Well, honey, maybe next week." Things like that. When Marcus wanted to go to a summer camp that cost like $2,000, my parents somehow found the money. When I wanted to take art classes that cost $300, the answer was that we needed to save. Looking back, I should have seen it coming, but when you're a kid, you just assume that's how things are. You know what I mean? I thought maybe it was because he was the oldest, or because he was a boy, or simply because my parents loved him more, and that hurt, but I accepted it as part of life. The thing is that Marcus was always kind of sickly when we were kids. He had problems with his immune system or something like that. He was always in the hospital, always with doctors. I donated blood for him when I was like 6 years old. They took bone marrow from me when I was 8, and my parents always presented it as something heroic, like I was a super sister saving my brother. And I felt good about it. Honestly, because it was the only time I felt like my parents really paid attention to me when I was helping Marcus. How twisted is that now that I think about it? But at the time, I saw it as my purpose or something like that. So, fast forward to like 8 months ago. Marcus, who had been relatively well for years, suddenly starts having serious kidney problems, like very serious. The doctors say he needs a kidney transplant because his kidneys are basically shutting down and dialysis isn't going to be enough long term. I was living in my own apartment at that point, working from home, had my life put together, and when I found out, obviously, I was worried. Marcus is my brother. I mean, beyond everything, I always loved him, and the idea of him being so sick scared me. But here's where things got weird. My parents didn't even call me to say hi. "Sophia, your brother is sick. We're worried." No. The first conversation I had with them was my mom calling me and saying, "We need you to go get the compatibility tests done this week." I already made an appointment for Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. And I was like, "Sorry, what?" And she acted like I was stupid for not immediately understanding that obviously I was going to donate my kidney to Marcus. It wasn't even a question. It was an order. I told her mom, "I need to think about it. This is major surgery." And she literally said, "There's nothing to think about, Sophia. He's your brother." I took like a week to research everything about kidney donations. And honestly, I got pretty scared. It's not just that they take out a kidney and that's it. It's real surgery with real risks. You can have complications, infections, long-term problems. Plus, I didn't have health insurance at that time because I was between freelance jobs, and insurance was super expensive. The medical costs were going to be like $30,000 or more. And although technically Marcus's insurance should cover the donor's expenses, there were a lot of things they didn't cover. And on top of that, I had to take like 3 months off work to recover, and I was basically living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't have enough savings to survive 3 months without income. I called my parents and tried to explain all this to them. I said, "Look, I want to help Marcus, but this is more complicated than I thought. We need to make a financial plan, and also the doctors told me there are some risks for my future health if I donate." And that's when my dad, who almost never spoke up in these conversations, exploded. He yelled at me that I was being selfish, that how could I think about money when my brother's life was at stake, that I was a bad sister and a bad person. My mom was crying in the background saying she couldn't believe her own daughter was so cold. It was horrible. I mean, they had never spoken to me like that. I felt like the worst piece of trash in the world. But something inside me broke at that moment too. Like, I realized they had never asked what I wanted. They never cared how I felt. And even though I felt guilty, I was also angry. Very angry. I told them I wasn't going to donate, at least not at that moment, that I needed time to figure everything out. My mom screamed something at me. I'll never forget. She said, "Sophia, you were born to help your brother. That's your purpose. And if you don't do it, you're failing at the only reason you exist." That was word for word. And my breath caught when she said it because there was something in the way she said it, something too literal, too specific. I hung up the phone and sat in my apartment like in absolute shock for, I don't know, hours maybe. And then my Aunt Rebecca called me, my mom's younger sister. Rebecca had always been kind of the black sheep of the family. She lived in another state, didn't come to family gatherings much, but when she did, she was always super affectionate with me. She said, "Sophia, I need to tell you something and you're going to hate me, but you need to know it." And that's when she told me everything. Turns out that when Marcus was like 4 years old, he got really sick. He needed a bone marrow transplant, and my parents weren't compatible. They looked in all the donor registries and couldn't find anything. So my mom, with my dad's full support, decided to have another baby specifically to be a donor for Marcus. But it wasn't that simple. They went to a fertility clinic and used genetic selection of embryos, in vitro fertilization, to make sure the baby would be compatible with Marcus. They had to try several times because the first embryos weren't compatible. 3 times specifically, Rebecca told me. 3 pregnancies that were terminated when the tests showed those babies wouldn't work to save Marcus. I was the 4th attempt. The winning embryo. The girl who finally had the right genes to save her older brother. They conceived me, they gestated me, they gave birth to me, all with a single purpose: to be a source of spare parts for Marcus. When I was born, they saved my umbilical cord blood. At 6 months, they took bone marrow from me for the first time. Throughout my childhood, I was subjected to medical procedures, not because I was sick, but because Marcus needed it. Rebecca told me all this crying on the phone, saying she had always wanted to tell me, but my mom had forbidden her from talking to me if she did, and that she couldn't bear to see me being pressured to donate an organ without knowing the truth. She told me she had tried to stop all this when she found out years ago that she had fought horribly with my mom. That's why they barely saw each other anymore. She told me she was so sorry, that she should have told me before. I hung up and I think I entered some kind of dissociation. I couldn't process what I had just heard. My entire existence was a lie. My parents didn't have me because they wanted me. They had me because they needed spare parts for my brother. Every time they told me, "We love you," every hug, every birthday, it was all fake. I wasn't their daughter. I was a medical kit with legs. The next few days were blurry. I didn't leave my apartment, didn't answer calls from anyone except Rebecca. She sent me documentation. She had copies of emails between my parents and the fertility clinic, medical bills from the embryo selection procedures, everything. It was real. It wasn't a mistake or an exaggeration. It was the horrible and scientifically documented truth of my birth. When I could finally function again, I decided to confront my parents. I went to their house. I was carrying all the documents Rebecca had sent me. And when I got there, Marcus was there too. I threw the papers on the kitchen table and said, "Explain this to me." My mom went white, like literally lost all color from her face. My dad tried to say it was complicated, that I didn't understand the context, that they had done what they had to do to save Marcus. I screamed at them that they had created me as an object, that they never cared about me as a person, only as a possible medical solution. Marcus. And you know what Marcus did? He laughed. He literally laughed and said, "Well, Sophia, now that you know you still have to donate, that's what you're here for." I left that house and swore I would never go back. I blocked my parents on everything. I blocked Marcus. I moved to Rebecca's house, which was like 3 hours away. She took me in without questions, gave me a room, helped me get therapy, because honestly, I was mentally destroyed. But here the story gets worse. Because apparently my parents and Marcus couldn't just let me go. Like 2 weeks after moving in with Rebecca, the police pulled me over while I was driving to the supermarket. They said they had an anonymous tip that I was transporting drugs. They searched my car, a 2015 Honda Civic. That was a mess, but it was mine. And they found a bag with methamphetamine hidden under the passenger seat. I almost got arrested right there. I was hysterical telling them it wasn't mine, that someone had planted it, but obviously that sounded like what any guilty person would say. The only thing that saved me was that Rebecca insisted on checking the security cameras in her building's parking lot before they took me to jail. And there it was, crystal clear on the video. Marcus arriving in his car, approaching mine, opening the door with like a tool or something, and putting something inside. He had come from another city specifically to frame me, to destroy me. The police arrested him 2 days later. And you know what my parents did when their golden child got arrested for planting drugs in his younger sister's car? They defended him. They went to the police station and yelled at the detective that it was all a misunderstanding, that Marcus was desperate because of his medical condition, that I had pushed him to, that by being so selfish, in denying him my kidney. My mom literally told the cop that I was the real criminal for letting my brother die. The detective called me later to tell me he had never seen anything like it, that he was documenting everything because it was completely insane. I decided to press charges against Marcus. Honestly, Rebecca convinced me. She told me that if I didn't, they were going to keep escalating things. And she was right. Marcus ended up going to prison for 6 months. It probably would have been more, but his lawyers argued that his kidney disease gave him, mitigating circumstances or something. While he was waiting for sentencing, my parents started a GoFundMe campaign. Can you believe it? Telling a completely twisted version of the story, where I was an evil sister who refused to save her dying brother and had also gotten him arrested. They didn't mention anything about why they conceived me, nothing about the planted drugs, nothing real. They raised $15,000 before I could do anything about it. I was furious but also defeated. My family was literally destroying me publicly, and strangers were giving them money to support them. Until Dr. Harrison showed up. Dr. Harrison had been our family doctor when I was little. He was already retired, but Rebecca contacted him and told him what was happening. He remembered all the procedures they had done to me as a child, and although technically he couldn't reveal medical information, he decided that what my parents were doing was so unethical that he had to act. He gave me copies of my complete medical records where it was clearly documented that all the procedures they had done to me were for Marcus, not for me. He also had correspondence with the fertility clinic where they confirmed the embryo selection procedures. With that information, I went to a lawyer. And basically, we told my parents that if they didn't take down the GoFundMe and stop publicly defaming me, we were going to make public all the medical records showing they had conceived me as a designer baby to save Marcus. We were also going to report the fertility clinic, because it turns out what they did was in a legal gray area, especially the terminations of previous pregnancies for genetic compatibility reasons. They didn't take down the GoFundMe. So we made the documents public, and a massive scandal broke out, like it was in the local news, on the internet, everywhere. The fertility clinic was investigated and they ended up taking away the license from the doctor who had done the procedure. Turned out he had done the same thing with other families too. I mean, this wasn't an isolated case. My parents became like the national example of horrible and manipulative parents. The GoFundMe was shut down and they had to return the money. But it still wasn't over. Because when Marcus got out of prison after serving his sentence, my parents posted on social media that he had tried to commit suicide because I had abandoned him in his darkest moment. They posted a picture of him in a hospital bed, connected to a bunch of machines. I went into total panic. Despite everything that had happened, I didn't want Marcus to die. I called the hospital, and after a lot of insisting, I managed to confirm that Marcus was fine, that he was there for his regular dialysis treatment, not for any suicide attempt. They had made it all up. They had taken a picture during his regular treatment and used it to manipulate me. Rebecca helped me report it to the authorities because it was basically fraud and extreme emotional manipulation. At that point, even the extended family who had been trying to stay neutral couldn't take it anymore. My grandparents, uncles, cousins, everyone cut contact with my parents. They were left completely alone. I decided to move to another city, start completely from scratch where nobody knew my story. I got a stable job at a design agency. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well and had good health insurance for the first time in my life. I met Nathan 6 months after moving, at an art exhibition of all things. He's a photographer, 3 years older than me. And when I finally told him my whole story after 2 months of dating, I thought he was going to run away. But he hugged me and told me that none of that changed who I was, that I wasn't responsible for my parents' horrible decisions. We got engaged 3 months ago. And here comes something I'm still processing. I'm pregnant. I'm 10 weeks along. When I found out, honestly, I had a massive panic attack because all I could think about was how my parents had brought me into the world with a specific purpose, not out of love. I was in therapy working through this for like 2 weeks before I could even get excited about the pregnancy. But now, you know, I'm starting to feel something different. This baby is going to exist because Nathan and I want them. Period. Not because we need something from him or her. Not because they have to fulfill any specific role. Just because we want to be parents and give this little person all the love I never had. Rebecca is going to be the godmother. Dr. Harrison, who's like 75 years old now, said he wants to be like the honorary grandfather because my real grandparents are too traumatized by everything to have much contact yet, although they've been kind to me from a distance. Nathan and I are setting up a nursery in our new apartment. It's small, but it's ours. I haven't heard anything from my parents in almost a year. I heard through Rebecca that they finally got a kidney donor for Marcus through the National Registry, someone who died in an accident and was compatible. Marcus is better now, apparently. Part of me, a very small part that I hate to admit exists, is glad he's okay. But most of me just doesn't feel anything when I think about him or my parents. Like they're dead to me emotionally. Last week, Nathan asked me if I would ever want our child to meet my parents when they're older. I told him I didn't know. That maybe someday, when I have the emotional strength I could, consider something super supervised. But for now, the answer was a firm no. He told me that whatever I decided was fine, that my only responsibility was to protect our family, not fix the previous one. And that made me cry. I mean, cry hard, because nobody had ever given me permission to just let all that go. I'm still in therapy. I'll probably be in therapy for years because finding out you were conceived as a medical solution is a pretty specific and twisted trauma. But I'm better. I sleep better. I eat better. I can think about the future without feeling that crushing weight that my life doesn't belong to me. It belongs to me now. For the first time in 24 years, my life is mine. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if my parents had simply told me the truth from the beginning. If they had raised me with real love in addition to their medical objective. If they had given me the option to donate instead of demanding it. Maybe it would have been different. Maybe I would have donated voluntarily if I felt it was my choice. I'll never know. What I do know is that what they did was unforgivable. They created a human life as a means to an end, and when that life developed its own will and said no, they tried to destroy it. Yesterday, I had my first ultrasound, where you could see the baby clearly. Nathan was crying next to me watching the screen, holding my hand so tight, and all I could think was, this baby is going to know every day of their life that they're loved for who they are, not for what they can give. I'm going to break this cycle. I already broke it, actually. This is my family now. Nathan and this baby, and Rebecca and Dr. Harrison, and it's enough. It's more than enough.